it's me.
You dumb bitch.
I'm terrible at introductions.
It's fun. All right.
Hello. No, I was just doing like you pretending to be you
Do you
introducing.
remember one time I forgot my name and the free rotation's name? Yeah, less perspective.
AJ, I forget my name all the time. I
This
completely
is
understand.
Mallory with the Slavery Squared podcast.
What the hell is Slavery Squared?
Because it's free rotation instead of
Slavery Squared sounds racist as
free.
shit. I'm going to cancel you.
slave. Square rotate. Never mind. Just
We can cancel brown people now, Becky.
Okay.
You good, Chris? You're
Jesus
having an
Christ.
embolism?
Yes. Hello, Free Rotation Nation. This is Chris with here with Bobby.
Hi.
And Angela.
Hello.
And Rebecca.
I
And on this week's episode, we're going to be getting into something a little more heavy and less fun. We're going to talk about the recent mass graves that they've uncovered in Canada of the, here we would call them indigenous and first tribes, school children, basically. They're just mass graves of children that were forced to go to a school that was basically for eradicating their culture. I mean, it really was just to kill them, like to kill everything the church and specifically the Catholic or the Canadian government thought was heathenistic or uncivilized about the First Nations tribes. So they literally they made it law that these kids had to go to, and they didn't, and it's weird when you get into it because a lot of these schools are Roman Catholic, but they didn't have to be. Basically, the government they just gave carte blanche to all these churches and said, come build schools to teach the kids the Christian way. So the majority of them ended up being Roman Catholic, but not all. And because they just there was no, this is the 1800s, there was no regulation. These schools were shoddily built. It was a disaster from the start. Canadian indigenous tribes have been complaining about this basically since it started, and no one would listen to them. The way it got found, the first mass grave, was the tribes took up what equates to a GoFundMe to pay people that had ground-penetrating radar to come out and search these school campuses for these graves because no one took them seriously. So the first month they were out there doing the ground-penetrating radar, they found 215
Jesus Christ.
unmarked children's graves. They've gone to the same school and found 751 more. And it's not like it's a big pit, it's weird to think about, but like if they took 1,200 kids or whatever and lined them up inside of a big hole and shot them all and buried them, it's atrocious, but it's weird because it's more of like a one-time thing. This is more of a 160-year ongoing, nonstop, mistreating the children, torturing them, beating them to death, and it was just either overlooked by the church or just ignored.
Weren't some of these schools still like operating in like the 90s and stuff?
They were. I think the last one closed in like 96. So you're talking from, I think, like 1837 maybe to 1996. So 160 years of this atrocity.
Yeah, so when we talk about when Chris had mentioned what the schools were set out to do, that references something we call settler colonialism, which is different from colonialism. So when you think about it, every explorer that came over to the New World was given a papal bull that said, once you get there, you had the right under the church's authority to take this land. You claim it for the church or whatever. Yeah. So under colonialism, what you do is you come over with the intent to have an economic boon. You settle, but you become traders. You govern the indigenous peoples, but you don't try and eradicate it.
Yeah.
So in settler colonialism, which is what Canada settled as, it's a complete eradication of the indigenous species. They either convert to your way of living or they're killed.
Yeah.
And Canada not only, like we think of this as being, that was the 1700s. No, this was as late as 2017 that this was still continuing. So you had, back in 1763, you had the Royal Proclamation. This was an attempt for England to protect the native species from the settlers. And it was basically, you know what, you have the right to your land. You can sell it to us whenever you choose, but only to us. Well, the settlers in Canada were like, fuck that. You're not here. We want the land now. So they completely just ran roughshod over that decree, which led to the Gradual Civilization Act of 1857, which targeted men. And it was like, hey, if you conform to our way of being, we'll enfranchise you, which means they could vote. We'll give you all the rights. But there was a gender bias where women... So say Indian man decided... indigenous man decided to marry outside of an indigenous tribe. He retained all of his tribe...
Rights.
Yes. I can't think of the word. But if a woman did it, she was no longer... had any rights to her tribe. So it was a way of gender bias against women as well, just to keep everyone separated and how they were doing it. And then the Indian Act of 1876, which it was amended after the World War, I think in like 1951. But it ended up giving the Canadian government absolute control over the reservations, the reserve lands, political practices, cultural practices, education. Again, gender bias was huge in this. But it essentially said, you know what? You have no rights. We're Canada. We control it all. You can have reservation land, but we're still going to govern it. And adjusted, but under that act, the Indian Act became a residential school, and those started in 1880. And it said that about 150,000 children up to 1996 were sent to those schools. And they estimate that 30,000 died. I mean, think about that. It's like a fifth.
That's a solid fifth, yeah.
See, and I was looking earlier today when we were kind of preparing, and the number a lot of the First Nations people were saying is 300,000.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah, they said that they took about 300,000 of our children because if you were indigenous and you did not send your kids to school, to these specific schools, the repercussion was the male of the family went to jail.
Yeah.
That's how they enforced it. Like either you go to jail or your kids go to school.
Right.
And again, these are largely patriarchal societies. I mean, that's just what it is. You can't have the men going to jail.
That's right.
Like, it just can't happen.
Especially when you consider that the men were the only one enfranchised.
Yeah.
Who had the option of existing in this world. And these schools were terrible, terrible. Their whole purpose was to completely indoctrinate, remove all culture, all religion from the kids and make them white, so to speak.
Now, a lot of those languages and a lot of those original beliefs and anything that originates from the indigenous people, they're almost extinct now because of the indoctrination of those children.
Right.
Because if a family member came to visit at those schools, because they did have visitation, but it was very limited, you were only allowed to speak English to the children, and the children were not allowed to speak back and in their indigenous language. I mean, to the point that even visitation was made difficult when the Canadian government basically wanted to push the families would come and visit, and they would stay in lands near where these schools were. And the Canadian government was like, we need to actually put these schools out even more remote so they can't.
Right, so they can't actually get to them to
Exactly.
visit. Yeah, and so it wasn't just like a brutal disciplinary system. You had kids who were sexually abused, and this was documented within the Catholic Church. I mean, go figure.
Yeah.
But to the point that when these kids died, the Catholic Church just removed the tombstones. Like, we don't give a shit about you.
They would lie, and so like there were stories that their families would tell the indigenous folk that basically that the kids that got back to the parents, that basically the place was so awful that kids would try to run away. But they were so far removed from any sort of way to survive, like civilization. You got to remember, it gets rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tundra during the winters, and it is heinous.
Right.
There's a reason 90% of their population lives on the U.S. border. It's because if you get much further north, it's unlivable. It's just bad.
Yeah, I lived up by the Yukon, and I was shocked at how cold. It is so cold. Nothing ever gets warm. Your car, you could drive for hours. It never gets above the cold mark.
Yeah,
it is freaking cold. And this is Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. Very, very, like, poorly settled. It's not like you could just walk 2 miles down the road and meet a city. Like, if you've ever flown over Canada, it is literally like an hour in a plane before you see a town below you.
A lot of trees.
Well, I'll go and tell you, my dad used to do cold weather training in Wisconsin. He would train Marines, and he trained other military special forces on cold weather survival. In Wisconsin, on this side of the border, minus 30 is not... It's not unheard of. It's just that's winter temperature. Like it's negative 30 outside. Go another 300 miles north.
Minus 60.
Yeah, it's legit. You can't be outside
Yeah.
in it.
I couldn't stand it. Okay, when I first got to Canada, it was in October. It was like October 21st. And I was told, don't go outside. But you know what? It was snowing, but it didn't seem cold. I was outside less than 3 minutes. I had frostbite, severe frostbite on my ears.
Yeah, exposed skin
Like
dies.
they were completely white. And I was like, oh my God, I've barely been out here. So I learned. And I hated it. Everything is eiderdown because it's the only way you can possibly get warm.
Sure.
And it's like, also, it stays dark, like 4 hours of daylight. It is dark. It's dark, cold, just wretched.
So think about that. And you're also thinking about children who are being, at best, beaten, at worst, beaten, molested, whatever.
Starved.
Yeah. Tortured. Deciding to run. Getting to that point where they know it's probably death if I go out there. And then being drugged back. And the story is they would basically be tortured to death if they tried to leave.
Yeah.
And then basically chucked in a hole and called it a day.
Right.
And they told the families they just ran away.
Oh, they ran away. And you know what? The families know there's no hope because if the weather doesn't get you, the bears, the grizzlies,
even this, you're talking kids,
Timberwolves,
10 years old. They're not surviving that winter.
No.
I don't care how, if you grew up there or if you know how to survive with your seal suits and
Yeah.
food and fire and hunting equipment and
You know, in the 10-foot drifts and
none of that's here.
yeah.
These are kids stuck off in the wild in the middle of winter
Yeah.
in Canada. It's over. There is no survival, and that's basically what they told the parents was, they just ran away and died.
Yeah. In the town I lived in, like the animals starved, like horses starved to death because there's no way to feed them.
Yeah, there's nothing growing.
Right. And a lot of times the highway shut down. The Alaskan highway ran where I live, so it wasn't that bad. But it was so cold and so little to eat that a timber wolf, the very first timber wolf I did, which by the way is shockingly big.
Yeah, they're big boys.
Yeah. They came into town and I was like, what? He can kill people.
Yeah, he's
But
gotta find
he's
food.
so hungry that he's looking for your cat, your dog, your kid.
Anything.
Yeah.
My grandpa, who was born in Alaska and lived up there, caught one, a wild timber wolf.
Oh.
Yeah, he decided it was his pet and brought it back to Georgia, and it stayed chained up a lot of the time. His name was Lobo. He was a big boy. There's pictures of him, and they are unsettlingly large.
Yeah.
Their legs come up to like
Yeah,
It's like a dire wolf.
yeah, it's insane.
It's animals up there because it's such harsh conditions. The ones that survive are it's weird to see, but like when you see a moose like the first time, they're not like a deer. They're like a 2-story animal
They're
walking
freaking
around.
enormous.
Like you really don't grasp how large
and they will
are.
kill you. You
Yeah.
have got to get away from
It's
them.
2,500 pounds of it's an SUV walking
Yeah.
through the woods.
Yeah.
It's a brick shit
Grizzly
house of a
bears
deer.
are enormous.
Yeah.
And their claws literally like they're as big as your forearm.
Yeah, you can see, like, you can Google it and just look at the recent Kodiaks and grizzlies in Alaska that have been shot.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be people that live up there. It's like, it was looking in my window of the second story on a time, just
Yeah.
looking in there.
Yeah.
And they just shot it. And it's like, huh.
And Kodiaks are a bit more passive, but a grizzly, they will kill you.
They're just big.
Yeah.
But everything up there
Yeah.
that survives they're monsters.
In Canada, they say that grizzlies will kill you for sport just to amuse themselves. So you really have to avoid grizzlies. So the point is that kids,
There's no way.
if they run away, they're not making it.
But that's all. But that's what these schools / churches / whatever you want to call them are telling the parents, because it basically absolves anything. No one's going to believe the First Nations peoples when they go to the Mounties or
Right. No.
whoever and say, "Hey, I think the school killed my kids."
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna, even if they do check up on it, and you're talking late 1800s, they're gonna go talk to whoever's in charge of the school, which was usually religious. So it's gonna be
Right.
a bishop or an archduke or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and he's gonna say, they ran away.
Sister Scary Mary, who doesn't give a shit.
That's where it ends.
Or oh no, they chose not to go back home, so we assimilated them with a nice family, in Edmonton or Calgary, somewhere. So we had this enacted in the 1800s, in 1880. So in 1928, they took it one step further. You know how we can completely eliminate indigenous people? Eugenics. Mm-hmm. So the Sexual Sterilization Act was enacted. Wasn't repealed until 1970s.
So it seems horrifying, but you have to think most countries back then had some form of eugenics that were going on. Mm-hmm. Basically, even in the U.S., if you were born with what they call, it was basically you were mongoloid retard, is what they called Down syndrome, kids that were mentally had problems.
Yeah.
anything on the spectrum, stuff like that, they would just sterilize them because they did not want them breeding because they didn't. And again, this is the early 1900s. They didn't know how they would survive without having to be
Constantly
coddled by the
monitored.
state.
Yeah.
Right. They provided no.
Yeah, there was nothing.
Yeah.
So
it's
they
like
thought
we're
it
gonna
was-
have to do everything for you. You have no give back.
Yeah, they thought it was more humane to stop them from being able to breed and have more kids with Down syndrome or whatever. It was a bad way to think about it, but it was kind of the norm back then. Like, it wasn't like Canada was the only place doing it. We did it for
No,
years.
it's just Canada was the only place doing it to healthy people.
Eh,
Well,
eh,
I
let's
know
slow down.
we did it to African Americans here, I think in the 1960s. So
But it's again, it's not. This is what's going on, and when you talk about colonialization and settlers colonialism, it's not just that's how Canada works. That's pretty much how every
yeah,
when anywhere is colonized by someone with superior firepower, this is what happens. You kick the natives out because what do you need them for? Like literally, if you have the science and technology that is superior to theirs, sorry, you were on my land before I got
Well,
here.
and here's the thing: a lot of this will pretty much evolve toward the late 1800s, anyways, because up until after the War of 1812 and all of that stuff, a lot of colonies and a lot of settlers coming in, they worked well with the indigenous people. They used them until they were not usable anymore.
They needed the local knowledge,
Yeah.
of
Right.
the flora and fauna and the seasons. They need
Yep.
to know what will grow, what won't grow, what can we kill, what can we hunt, how do we hunt it, how do we harvest it.
yeah,
Right.
Once you have that knowledge and you have superior firepower,
Bye.
it's just over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the settlers over in North America had a very Eurocentric view. We're just gonna be little Europe.
So we say that, but you look at Genghis Khan, he would basically do the same thing. He would move in with superior firepower, and you either bow or you're annihilated. You look at the English when they took over India, bow or you're annihilated. They did the same thing to the Scottish, the Irish. This is just what colonial forces always have done. The Spanish did it. When you look at like De Soto, when they came through Hispaniola,
Yeah.
bow or be
And
annihilated.
there's an argument for settler colonialism over just colonialism because look at the French in Vietnam.
Sure.
They allowed them to pretty much keep their own identity and
So
throw out the colonists.
even then, people forget that by the time we had stepped into Vietnam, before it was Vietnam, it was French Indochina, and they had been fighting the French for 90 years.
Right.
Like, people think
A
we just stepped
very
in.
long time.
It was a 90-year war before we got involved. And even then, the French were, and it's not like King Leopold and the Congolese, but they were basically abusing the Vietnamese for the exports, which is
Right.
this is just what it is when you colonize somewhere. I'm not saying it's justified. I'm saying this is just what humans are. This is just what they do. They just move in, take what they
Yeah.
want, and if you can't stop them, sorry.
And that's why the Native Americans here still call us colonizers because
That's what we are.
we are still colonizers.
Well, and it predominantly colonization really only occurred I say really only occurred, but really there's a huge link between Christianity and colonization because it was always
The Crusades.
That and plus the fact that the belief that if you brought God into these more indigenous tribes and stuff like that, you were not only saving yourself, but you were saving their
and
souls.
you had a papal bull, which was basically a proclamation that said, "Go proselytize, take whatever you want."
So here's the thing. It's just justification. You
Yeah.
can say that it was...
It's just greed.
Yeah, the Crusades... But the Crusades started when the Muslims started trying to march on and Christian cities, and the Christians were like, nah, we're going to take yours now. You've made a mistake.
Well, it even goes back farther than that.
Oh, it all does.
Like, we go to the 13th and 14th century when the Black Plague is occurring. At that time, the Catholic Church was already becoming more secular. And then here comes the Black Plague, and they're like, God is punishing us. We need to be better people. We need to proselytize. We need to do this. We need to do that. So this has been going on for
Forever.
centuries, and it's just we always talk about this. History is just a chain link fence.
Yep.
And every link that adds to it is something from the past. And it all builds up to
Which,
that.
funny enough, when COVID-19 happened, a lot of people compared it to the Black Plague because the Pope had come out in support of same-sex marriage and just allowing people to be people. So, he brought it on us. Look what happened. It's a Black Plague all over again.
But I mean, even
I will argue that it's because Popeyes actually challenged the chicken
Lord
sandwich
Chick-fil-A
from
can't
Chick-fil-A.
stand up to Popeyes.
And
Let's
God
be
was
honest.
like, Chick-fil-A
I
I
is
will
my
said it.
fist
cheese
fight
in.
you in this
I
room.
said it. Popeyes is better.
Popeyes has better chicken tenders.
That may be true, but who gives a shit about their chicken tenders?
They have spicy chicken tenders. Fucking Chick-fil-A took those away. Sorry.
It is the chicken sandwich, and is the king of all chicken sandwiches.
I don't get chicken sandwiches that often.
I will say that Big Chick actually has a really good chicken sandwich.
Big Chick
Probably
does.
better than Chick-fil-A.
You are not going to the Big Chick in my town because that place is a dumpster fire.
Where are you going?
The one in where I live. The one where I live is a dumpster fire, and also no
Well, you can cut
city.
that out.
Jewel's is pretty good too.
I do like Joel's.
Yeah.
Ooh, Jewel's is good.
Yeah, but
The
it's not,
pimento
it's
cheese.
different. It's a
It
different
is
thing.
different.
It's not
Yeah.
Catholic,
It's
I'm
Cajun
sorry.
chicken.
Yeah.
It's not comparable.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that's where COVID came from.
Well, anyways,
So, going back to the sexual sterilization,
Back to something that's actually
Segue.
relevant and
Yeah.
not
Wait.
Chick-fil-A versus
we think
Popeyes.
of this as being like, I was in the past, 2017.
yeah. Well, we look at it generally now, especially from where we live, is that's what the Nazis did. They sterilized people. But you know who else did it? The Japanese, the Canadians, us. Like
Yeah.
pretty much every.
But Canada was caught in 2017 still doing this. Like, hey, women would give birth. Hey, you can't see your baby till you get your tubes tied.
I would be willing to bet that still happens in a lot of countries.
It's still happening
Yeah.
here with the people that were in the camps.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more
Still
common
happening,
than you
yeah.
think, and I think a lot of these things, when you're talking about like, it's just crazy to think that, and again, we look at it like this is stuff the Nazis do, or this is stuff that horrible regimes do,
Yeah, no,
I think this is just
what
stuff that humans
everybody-
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's terrifying to think about. But you can't, if you wield this much power over the powerless. They either have to bend to your will, or you
Right.
can crush them.
And just think of the saying that history is written by the victors is very true.
It
If
is.
Hitler had won, we wouldn't hear about all the atrocities.
No.
We would hear about the atrocities committed here.
Yeah, we would hear about the
Yeah.
Japanese.
Can you imagine what the U.S. and Canada did to their indigenous populations?
Yeah, well, they're still today, like recently, there are news reports coming out of China that are criticizing Canada for
Oh
the way they
yeah, the
treated
whataboutism
indigenous.
is occurring.
Yeah, and I want to be like,
Yeah.
the first time I
Yeah.
saw that, I'm like, are you China?
China, Russia, North Korea,
Yeah, don't you
Belarus,
currently have,
Iran.
and Iran, like,
And Venezuela.
Yeah, don't
and
you
Venezuela.
don't you currently have concentration camps today?
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
And see, what Chris is referencing is in 2007, the UN came out and, what was it called? A Declaration of Rights for Indigenous Peoples. Canada voted no against it.
Of course.
Which, of course they did.
They have to.
But British Columbia actually adopted it, I think, in 2016 into their schools and stuff, and into their legislative practices. But the rest of Canada says, nope.
They're not Canadians.
Yeah.
They don't look that. They basically don't look like. They don't look at them like they're Canadians. They are the other. They're on the land, but they're not with them. And it's hard for me to justify like the stories that are coming out of these schools are horrific. And I mean, it's been a month, and they found
Yeah.
1,000 bodies at 7 schools. There's 493 schools to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that's how much they searched.
Well, and the thing is, here's the thing, and I get it. You know, there's always, I'm just putting this out as a devil's advocate. There's two sides to every story. But in this circumstance, in what benefit has there been to any of these schools' existence? There, literally nothing has come out. People who have lived or who have gone to these schools, I mean, they have come out and say, we've just lost our culture.
Not only that, Canada has actually started paying people reparations as of
Right.
like 2016 for being forced to go to these
Yeah.
schools, which means they at least acknowledge it was wrong.
Well, and on top of it, it's like even basic things like for indigenous people, your hair is sacred.
Yeah, they cut it off.
As punishment.
the
They
dances,
would
and you could no longer do your tribal
They
dance.
would cut your hair. They would do anything to demean your culture in lieu of becoming a more colonized, civilized, quote unquote, individual.
And I mean, there were stories that like the heads of these schools would like, I mean, they were raping the children.
Yeah.
And like the girls would get pregnant, and they would either, and again, I don't know, this is not proven yet, but there were the stories that they would just take the babies and chuck them in a fire, like into the furnace, or they'd bury them alive, because you couldn't have that running around. And it's like, what kind of monsters are these people? And
But you have to think, they thought these people were not people.
I understand that. However, it's hard to think that when there's a baby involved
Well,
that's half yours.
and I agree with that, but I'm saying, like, in their brain, they're justifying it as these are not real people.
And
These are not their subpar existence or just bring nothing to us. And that's not. I mean, I'm not condoning it.
Calm matters attack Becky.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, human nature, humans in general, will find a way to justify anything
Oh, of course.
that they've done.
Well, the part I'm concerned with is I don't know if they're going to be able to find it. Is I'd like to see a trail of evidence that the archdiocese knew this was going on and either condoned it or allowed it.
Well, the UN told not only the Canadian government but the Holy See, you have to figure this out.
Well, even the Pope's representative or whoever there, his writer, they came out and refused to apologize.
Yeah.
Now, the Archbishop of, I think, Montreal or Quebec came out and apologized for it, and he's trying to work with them to... I don't know what you can do at this point. Like, I don't know how you heal this wound.
Especially since Quebec wasn't part of the provinces that, this happened in yet.
Yet.
But at least he's tried. It's
Well,
one.
so here's the thing. It's the right thing to do.
Right.
And
If it's your organization that was responsible for this, even if it was 100 years ago.
and British Columbia is trying,
Yeah.
but
I don't know. And I don't know
they've
what
been
you
begging
do.
you for
100 years.
to look into these
To do
schools.
anything.
And like literally as early as 20 years ago, asking you to fund this. All they asked for was, and I know it sounds like a lot, but $2.7 million is not a lot of money to a government, especially not Canada on the western side where Alberta makes so much in excess. They actually refund. You don't pay taxes.
They pay you
They
taxes.
pay you. They make an enormous amount of money. I'm not saying Manitoba and Saskatchewan do. They're very poor.
Nothing in Saskatchewan.
But I lived in Canada for a while, and from a personal perspective, the woman I was with at the time, her dad was Inuit, and she was passing. She refused to go out in the sun. She didn't want to look native.
Sure.
And I didn't get it because we don't really treat... Well, we're also not around Native Americans. I don't know how they were treated out there, but she didn't want to look like it, and she really, really was sad that her son, you could tell, he was Inuit.
So I have friends in Oklahoma that are, some of them are part Native, some of them are not. It doesn't seem to be a thing. Like, I'm sure there are parts of the country where it is, but out there, no one seems to care.
And I'm not because we have done atrocities to our Native Americans.
Of course.
But I think it's one of those circumstances where we've recognized it, especially in our education. Even though we can talk bad about the American education system, they do educate us about what the atrocities we did to the Native American. You see now it's like you see a Native American, it's like, that is so cool. That is a history that we will never have.
You just have a respect.
Right. Like the things that you were here before any of us could have ever been here. And your legacy is what stays
Not
in this
the
earth.
same in Canada.
No.
Very, very discriminatory. I said something once to her son, and I didn't understand it, what I was saying at the time. I mean, I get it now. It's awful because she was saying no matter what Thomas does and how smart he is, it doesn't matter because they live in Canada. Well, one day I was getting him ready for school, and he hadn't showered in a couple of days. I'm like, you really need to shower. People's perception of you don't want it to be, a dirty Native.
Yeah.
Completely fucking wrong thing to say.
Yeah.
Sort of.
But I needed him to, because I thought, just don't be the stereotype.
Yeah, he's a kid. You need to get through to him.
I just absolutely devastated him. And she was so furious I had said that. She said, you don't know what you said. You don't know what you're saying.
And we just don't.
I don't.
It's like they don't understand how delicious sweet tea and biscuits are. I mean,
No, they do now because I went up there and made that shit. I fried chicken, made sweet tea,
grits.
but they also grits. But they made me bannock, which, oh my god, it's a native bread, and since they don't have like a stone oven, they pull down the oven door, and then they just pour like this delicious like flatbread batter on it and cook it, and it's so good. I'm like, it's called bannock. So good.
Bannock
A lot
the
of
disco?
Polish influence in
Yeah.
Canada too, by the way. A lot of Polish food. But yeah, so that's one of my big shames I've had over the years because I didn't get it. I have to tell you about this guy there, though. This native guy. And once again, none of the natives in town had a job. Wasn't for them lack of trying.
Just don't hire him.
Right. So Debbie was different in that she hired natives at her stores. So she ran a series. She owned a series of convenience stores, and she hired the natives. So now I get like what a big deal it was. But there was this guy, and in this negative 60 to 90 degree weather, wouldn't wear a shirt. Like, how do you fucking survive?
How'd your nipples not flake off?
And like, he was super thin, and like, it's not like he had a lot of, fat. And I'm like, there is something unique about Inuits, like just magical there.
What's just climatization? The same
Yeah.
way we don't think about people that live in like sub-Saharan Africa. Like, how do they survive out there? They've been doing it forever.
We can even say how people in like Maine wonder how we survive in the heat during like a heat wave.
Well,
Like,
yeah, no, that's true because a friend of mine came down from Virginia in Maryland and instantly got sick here.
Yeah.
Like pneumonia.
yeah.
Well, we don't think about it, but the military sends troops out to places weeks before they have to be on the ground.
To
For this
acclimate.
reason.
Acclimate.
You
Yeah.
have to climatize to where you're at,
Yeah.
or you'll just die. And like here, the humidity kills, but it's not so
Right.
bad. When you get out west towards Vegas, it's just plain
Dead
heat.
heat.
It's not wet heat. It's just hot, and it's really weird
Yeah.
because it's like stepping into an oven, and you don't, because we're so used to the heat here. You're sweaty and sticky and hot, and you feel sluggish when it gets that hot. Out there, you feel fine until you're unconscious from dehydration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really it's
That
a
you
really
didn't know was creeping up on
yeah,
you.
it's a really different thing, and people don't. Again, I don't want to live in Canada, having been to, Alaska and Wisconsin. I'm out on the cold.
It's beautiful. I'm
Cool.
gonna give you that. But it is fucking cold, and I realized I can't do it. I'm like you. I can't do it.
I'll look at it. From
I don't
pictures.
want to do it.
Yeah, I don't have to, so I won't.
Also, it's real goddamn expensive.
Canada?
Yeah, you like Toronto and shit. Fuck.
Oh no, that's
that's-
Toronto.
yeah,
that's
that's not
I,
bad.
okay, I'm talking about Metro Canada.
She's talking about
Okay.
like
That's still, yeah, I don't know.
Did you
about
ever
that.
go to Toronto? I don't think you really ever went to Toronto.
I flew through Toronto. I had no desire. It's basically like being in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like the East Coast version of every. But the thing,
But going out west, that is like frontier.
that's
Yeah.
Well, it really is. It is literally.
Really,
mean-
towns are only built up along the Alaskan Highway.
Yeah, they have to be. There's
Yeah.
no way to get anything out there if it's not flown out. You can't. You're not backpacking into the deep Yukon.
No.
Like you're just not.
And the oil fields are incredibly dangerous to work at because you can't work in the winter because of the snow.
Yeah, it's too cold too.
But then when it gets spring and summer, it's so wet and muddy from all the melted snow. And
there's just some places
just
we're
too
not
cold.
meant as humans to live, in my opinion.
I thought that. And also, well, first of all, I called the geese. They're Canadian geese. So they're like, yeah, it's Canada. It's Canada, eh?
That's just geese.
So did you say bacon?
No, it's it's not bacon. It's actually called something else. Bacon doesn't look like bacon. It's actual like squares of back. We call it back bacon, but they call it something else there. That's what they call bacon, but it's back bacon. If you know what back bacon is.
I used to think
and-
Canadian bacon was goose, so
Yeah.
I assumed that was the only
Yeah.
and moose were the only two animals they had.
And there's a reason they call it Canadian. I mean, the food was decent. I did like poutine.
Poutine's good.
Poutine
And,
is good.
It's so bad for you, though.
But here's the thing, like
tasty.
okay, we're from the South. First off, anything involving
True.
fried food, gravy,
gravy
and
and
cheese,
Fair.
like that's part of our like DNA structure as it is.
My first week there at a restaurant, I asked for sweet tea. And then I was like, it's just tea with ice and sugar in it. Well, they brought me a hot tea on ice and brought me sugar. And I'm like,
Could you take the ice out of
we
this
can
and
make this
bring me
work.
a hot tea?
That's what I was
Can I
like.
just have
Bring me a cup
water?
of ice?
Cup of ice and tea.
Yeah, I'll make this happen.
Can you imagine dipping fried chicken into poutine and how amazing that would be?
Yeah, I did it.
Oh.
It was so good. Especially when they would... so they had a way of doing poutine as well, where you would mix it all together and then they'd put it back in the pan and fry it. Sometimes with mashed potatoes on the bottom.
Really seal in the flavor.
Yeah, it was good. And they don't have... their stuff isn't in boxes. They have minimal packaging, so it doesn't look like here. It's like really normally in a bag without the box and
Sure.
stuff.
Well, they can't. There's no. There's
And
no,
milk is you're generally just powdered.
Yeah, there's no. Well, there's no trash man to come
Yeah.
through like Saskatchewan. Like
Yeah, and we have a huge trash waste here for no reason.
Yeah.
So there's laws there that limit the packaging.
well, here we're so caught up on the way it's packaged. Like we need things to look
Aesthetic.
nice, and
Yeah.
It's the aesthetic of
this
it.
could come in a bag and no one would.
Yeah.
But it's got to be this. It's got to be
Yeah.
the jewel inside the case.
That's right. Like, oh, the packaging makes it look so nice.
Yeah. But
Look at that advertisement right there.
Yeah, because now down here, if you bring me you have a plastic bag with something, hey, this is new, I'm gonna automatically think you stole it.
It's an open bag item, and I'm not taking it.
Well, I had the same thing when we were in Mexico, and they're like drinking orange juice out of a Ziploc bag, and they're trying to sell you orange juice out of a Ziploc bag. I'm like, there's not a chance in hell I'm drinking this. I don't know if you've had a ham sandwich in there.
I don't know if you put your hand in it.
A bag of cocaine, a bunch of dirt.
Ooh,
I'm
that
not
sounds kind of
drinking this.
nice. A bag of cocaine, a little
But,
fucking orange.
Orange
in there.
cocaine.
I mean, we went
Tastes like a
outside
crucible.
the resort areas because I like going to talk to people, and they're like, orange juice, and I'm like, not a chance in hell. You got a bottle of Coke that's still sealed? I'll drink that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
drinking
it.
your Ziploc bag orange
But
juice.
they
Are
have
you nuts?
it's bags of milk and orange
That's
juice.
how you end up like on a ransom website or on the black market for organs.
Well, that's how even the locals. That's just what they're doing. Like
Yeah.
they're just drinking out of bags because they don't have like
bottles and stuff.
glass is expensive.
Yeah.
And Mexico in whole is generally pretty poor.
Yeah.
So Ziploc bags it is.
You know what? I'd drink out of a Ziploc bag if I had to.
I mean, if I had to, I'd drink out of a shoe.
Yeah.
It's like drinking
I
out
don't
of,
have to.
yeah. It's like
Yeah.
drinking out of a plastic titty anyway. It's fine.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I'm like, I
Would
could
you
do
go to a
that.
random Mexican vendor and drink
Absolutely
his
not.
mystery
I mean,
liquids?
if she's a cute
Out
lady,
of all
I
of us,
might.
there 3 out of 4 of us I could see would not do that. The 4th would be Bobby.
Now, I did eat their mystery meats that they had drying out in the sun.
Yeah, tasty.
And I'm like, taco? Fuck yeah, let's go.
It's good, right?
It's smoked meat. How
Yeah.
bad can it be?
Yeah.
It's not smoked at all. They just butcher it and let it dry.
Yeah, it's good.
It's just hanging
It's
out
just
there.
jerky, dude. It's fine.
That's not how jerky's made.
I
at
don't
all.
care. It tastes fine to me. When I was down there,
Bobby's like
I was having a good
giving
time.
a reason as to eating it. Like,
Oh no, it was
Yeah.
delicious, but like
It was
you could-
tasty.
It smelled like when you walk through like the open air markets down there. It smells like and sounds like freshly butchered meats.
Yeah, like-
because they are freshly butchering the meats.
I had iguana. I had roasted crickets and stuff. It's good.
I believe that.
I didn't
It's
ask,
tasty.
I didn't ask what it was.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It's food.
I had a hard
Chocolate
time
covered ants
getting
are
Becky
good.
to try ahi tuna. Okay. I've
Why?
never-
Fuck.
she just didn't want to try it.
Uncultured.
Because I don't. Okay, there is a big difference between eating ahi tuna when you are right by the ocean versus eating ahi tuna at a local
And Dunwoody.
franchise restaurant in the middle of goddamn Georgia.
It's shit from the ocean.
Which restaurant? Because I'm not eating
Noobs.
ahi. I'm not eating ahi.
Oh,
anywhere
you're
in
trying.
this
I wouldn't eat at Nukes. Like either at a nice place.
The seller has good ahi tuna.
That's different.
But
I do like ahi tuna though. I mean, I'll eat it
Yeah.
now.
now, but it took. Like, my point was, it took me forever to get you
Yeah.
to try it. You're definitely not eating crickets.
Let me go on a limb here and tell you, if you're 3 hours away from the coast, don't eat seafood.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%.
It's a real
Well,
simple
so
rule.
after she ate ahi tuna, I had ordered tuna tartare. Becky thought, "Oh, I like ahi tuna." I warned her.
I tried it though.
did.
I was the point of trying
She
it.
nearly vomited all over the table.
You know, you gotta like, you know,
She was like, "Blah,"
I don't like
right?
tuna in general, so it's like I have to like sort of like.
Oh, this is like
Level up.
Superman tuna and
Yeah.
oily.
No,
Yeah.
I just.
It's good for you.
because she was like, "I love the ahi tuna." I was like, "This is tuna tartare."
But you know what? At
You
least
have
I
to be
tried it.
careful.
At
You
least I
did.
tried
You
it,
did.
and now I know I will never eat it
so
again.
when I got beef tartare, I said, "Do you want to try beef tartare?" She said, "No, absolutely not."
Like when I go get sushi, I get
Tartare
sashimi
means
and
raw.
eat raw fish.
Yeah.
It's good.
I like raw fish. I
Yeah.
just don't like tuna.
Eat raw tuna.
I love salmon.
Ugh. That's the fishiest of the fishes. I'm
That's
out.
fine.
I
Put
like
some hot
salmon,
sauce
though.
on it.
Yeah, put some hot sauce on
I
it.
can't deal with salmon.
I think we talked about it.
I mean, it's still ongoing. This is what
Yeah.
we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know what they did and kind of why they did it, but the Catholic Church, until someone digs up some records that show that like there's a chain of evidence that they knew and
Oh yeah, they're gonna.
again, either
Yeah.
they condoned it or ignored and let it happen.
Well, maybe this will actually get people to look at it and see how the first tribe's been fighting for their independence and rights for still to this day.
Yeah.
They're
not.
fighting.
They're not gonna be like ignored anymore. That's the thing.
Well,
It's
and
like-
now you
Yeah,
like
not
now that
anymore.
there's, I mean, there was like a lot of criticism that this wasn't getting national attention. It's gotten international attention.
yeah, now it has.
Yeah.
Well, the way we talk about systemic racism against African Americans here is exactly what the first tribes go through in Canada, and how the prisons for such a small population is over flooded with first tribes
Yeah.
people. Women, the indigenous women, disappear at an alarming rate. Girls are raped in the street.
The kidnappings on Indigenous women in Canada is
Yeah.
bananas.
You should,
There was
crazy.
a serial killer who targeted them
Yeah.
because he knew no one would give a
We
shit.
should talk about the Highway of Tears sometime.
Yeah.
It's a good, that'd be a good episode.
Like on the Alaskan Highway,
Yep.
when they take an indigenous child.
Yeah, he didn't
Oh,
care.
well.
But no, this is kind of what we know. Like the first tribes actually had to pay to have the ground penetrating radar themselves because
Yeah.
no one else would listen.
And now the government's like, hey, we'll give you
Yeah.
like we'll give you the money you asked for. No, you need to do a lot more now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you in
It's
trouble
too-
now.
It's too late for that.
Well, and here's the thing. It's like at some point you have to. The United States gets such criticism for being racial or systemic racism. We hear about it all the time. But at the same time, at some point, you have to look in at yourself and say, what are you doing wrong? Because this has been going on. This is still going on. Like, at some point, you have to look at yourself and say, we are just as bad as what we're complaining about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's different, and I think it's different because we're not really. It's still hard to, if you're a First Nations person in Canada, it's still hard to get employment.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
But it's stuff like this that is a catalyst
Yeah,
to
but there
change that.
has to be something.
Right.
Well, in
Because
their
otherwise it
land where they
continues.
live, like this is where the pipelines are running.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not what's that word? Circumstantial. It's not coincidental. It's not coincidental that the pipeline issue that the U.S. has borders Canada.
Yeah.
Like it literally, if it's Native Americans there on both sides, and the Sioux Nation has also been for a long time like really pushing for investigation. So it's not just one First Nation tribe; it's all of them.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I wonder, like, and I look at it like it's different on our end because, again, I look at the Canadian Indigenous people still can't get work.
Right.
I don't know anywhere that, and again, this is just my view that everywhere I've been, that doesn't hire black people, like just
Yeah.
flat out just refuses. That doesn't hire women. Like,
Yeah.
I think we may have moved past the vast majority of that. I'm sure there are still small little pockets there. that
Right.
little
Right.
shitholes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to exist no matter what.
Yeah.
Right, and I mean, at this point, the climate of it is if you get called out on it, your ass is getting chewed out. Like it's not.
You're getting canceled.
Yeah, like you're not. It's a very different perspective now than it used to be. But the thing is, at the same time, that's what I'm saying is it's like we've examined ourselves a lot more. I think that, and a lot of people talk about how bad the United States is. I feel like we, as a nation, tend to examine ourselves, be more self-reflective than most other places,
And try to find solutions.
Exactly.
I think that's our thing is like, if this is wrong, how do we fix it?
Right. Because, I mean, even in other countries, racism still exists. You don't hear about it as prevalently because...
Well, here's the thing. There are more slaves today than there have ever been in the history of the world. Today, there are more slaves. People that are enslaved.
Yeah.
No one gives two shits. Because most of it's in Africa and Asia.
Right.
And, again, I'm not saying it's for better or worse. I'm saying Africa is cut off from most of the first world nations. And it's because they have had a history of either colonialization through the Europeans or warring with themselves. And people don't look at them as...
Human.
Well, not human, but how do you stop? It's like trying to stop the warring in the Middle East.
Yeah.
How do you stop something that's been going on for
Oh,
thousands
yeah.
of
I mean,
years?
that's...
I don't know.
Israel and Palestine,
Yeah,
it's
how do you
just
fix
something
that?
that never ends.
Yeah,
It'll
how do you
never
fix it?
end.
Aliens.
Yeah.
Wasn't it back in like the early 80s or late 70s where this is the voice of Zulrig or something, and we've watched you grow. We notice your weapons of destruction. You have X amount of time, or we remove you from the galaxy.
No, I don't know. I never heard of this.
What's
Something
that?
like
Yeah.
Okay.
It
There's-
broke into a broadcast.
Yeah.
I think it was during the Vietnam War they were talking about it.
What's that theory? It originated out of like a sci-fi novel, but like most civilizations die or kill themselves before they can do intergalactic space travel. It's some theory. I forget what it's called.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, so
it's like
it's-
we have like 250 years before we just basically destroy ourselves.
So here's the problem.
Yeah.
It's proving a negative.
Yeah.
You can make theories that you can't prove all day long.
No, it's just based from a sci-fi novel.
No, I
That's all it is.
get the idea of it, but I hate those ideas because it's just you can't prove a negative.
Kind of like it because at some point it's a self-reflection of like, well, maybe that is something we need to look into.
There
So you
is-
say
yeah.
that, but we could have killed everybody with dynamite.
Yeah.
The Little Ice Age, when it knocked humanity down to about 48 people, we're still here in the billions.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, are you guys aware of what's going on in British Columbia right now and off the coast of Mexico?
No. Tell me.
Like, this is some crazy fucked up shit. So, underwater, off of Mexico.
Oh, you talking about that
huge
fireball?
fire.
Yeah. I just saw that. Yeah.
Well, in British Columbia, it's so hot. Like each day, it's record-setting
Yeah.
heat.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, they don't have air conditioner.
yeah,
there.
that heat bubble thing that was
Yeah.
happening in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
It's so hot that things are spontaneously combusting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Like-
seen that, and I've seen people are dying.
Yeah.
In record numbers in like Oregon because there are no air conditioners in the PNW.
It's
Here
like
comes
107 degrees
it was
in
120
Oregon.
last Wednesday.
Holy shit.
120.
We had a nice 80.
It's insane. It's like we've just flip-flopped.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody paid attention. Did y'all see the mushrooms on Mars? Is that just me? Did
Yeah.
y'all see that?
Yeah.
That's fucking bananas crazy. And here's what I think. Calling the shot.
You're putting it down today. This
Right
is
now.
it.
We were on
settled-
Mars.
Yeah.
We fucked it up and came here, and then through a series of natural disasters or solar
Series
flares,
of unfortunate events.
lightning storms, little ice age, plague, or whatever, we've lost whatever history we had that got us here. And we're going to figure it out with the Mars rover. They're just
Yeah,
going to...
probably the stuff we're finding is just
Yeah.
our ancient
Remnants of us.
civilizations.
Yeah.
Not aliens. We are the
Yeah,
aliens.
well, I don't think...
There's this whole theory that we are actually
Yeah,
the aliens.
I think they're going to find out we came from
Because
Mars.
we're not really equipped to live here on Earth based on the gravity and how our body is shaped. We stand upright.
Well, we're not... So here's the thing. We're not equipped to live anywhere. It's real... We're weird. We're really weird because deer don't need houses and square corners and comfortable. Ants don't need that. Hawks don't need that. Only thing on Earth that needs this is us.
Is us. We don't have hair in the appropriate places.
And-
We can't. We're not webbed.
Yeah.
We walk upright in gravity that pulls our bodies down and not on four.
Yeah.
Even things that can walk upright walk on four.
And maybe when we were on Mars, we were engineered to get the hell off of Mars.
Yeah.
Maybe long before we built stuff on Mars, we were engineered to build stuff on Mars. I don't know.
Do you ever wonder what NASA found under the ocean that caused them to want to get back off here?
Yeah, get into space.
Yeah. Probably.
I just want to point out that we somehow managed to rope it right back to UFOs and aliens.
Hey, you know what, Becky?
Well, maybe they're.
Mushrooms growing on Mars is insane, and no one's talking about
I
it.
understand that, but it started as an episode about mass graves in Canada, and we're now looking at the mushrooms in Mars.
Hey, Becky, guess what?
We're talking
What?
about human nature.
We fully rotated.
Yeah. Back to our crazy conspiracy theories.
Also, if you're listening to this, you can look up the Mars rover's pictures of the growing mushrooms on Mars.
Yeah.
It is bananas crazy, and no one's talking about it, and I want to pull my hair out. Like, what? There are plants growing on another planet that we found. No one's gonna say nothing.
And said nothing grows here. It's just all rock.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
We found an edible plant growing there, and no one's gonna say anything. And
I wonder how.
I know mushrooms aren't a plant; they're a fungus.
Say,
I get it.
wonder
Blah
how,
blah blah.
They're a fun
I
guy.
wonder how
They're edible.
I wonder
Yeah.
how they'll taste on a pizza.
No, I want to know if they're psychedelics.
I know China said they're gonna have people on Mars in 3 years.
Nice.
Wow.
Find out.
They just announced.
Elon Musk already has people on Mars, and we just don't know
That's
about
where
it.
I think the mushrooms came from.
It's like Elon Musk playing a prank, like, hey, bitch.
Hey, Becky, can you tell them where we come from?
Oh,
That was a good segue, I thought. Is that good?
no, that was good. That was good.
you
Are
can.
we done talking? I didn't know.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. I was just going to say that Elon Musk thinks we live in the Matrix in a
yeah.
simulation, so he probably has figured out a way to manipulate it so he's on Mars.
There you go.
Okay, well, you cannot find us on Mars, but you can find us on Facebook at the Free Rotation
Or
Podcast.
can you?
She doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if
I
this is
really-
actually Mars?
I would
Yeah.
love for somebody to listen to the first 3 minutes of this podcast. No, let's do 5 minutes. 5 minutes of this podcast, and then listen to the last 5 minutes of this podcast and wonder where this.
Where's the disconnect?
Where did the disconnect happen?
ADHD,
Where did the
baby.
railroad come from?
ADHD,
Yeah.
baby.
You can find us on Twitter at the Free Rotation Podcast. You can find us on YouTube and Twitch at the
Spotify?
Free Rotation. You can find us on all
Pornhub.
your favorite podcasting apps. Not Pornhub. That's
Yes,
not a
you can.
podcasting app. And you can check us out at thefreerotation.com.
Pornhub has, Pornhub
Pornhub
has a podcast, let's be honest.
They probably do.
Yeah,
There's
they got-
probably like the porn cast or
And we're
something
next
like
to
that.
it. Like, it's like free rotation.
No.
And,
No.
yeah,
No.
guaranteed.
No.
I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah, I think it's
First
happening.
5 minutes of the podcast.
I'm
last
going to
5
guest
minutes.
star on the Pornhub cast, and then I'm going to give a shout out to our podcast, and then we're going to be in forever linked.
Oh, you can also find us with the Gerblins.
With the
Bye.
girl-
Split Purdy with the Gerblins.
Do the Gerblins come from a Gerba Jam?
They do now.
Oh my
Bye, everyone.
These are so much more
Love
fun
you.